Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Game Alone's podcast. And I'm absolutely delighted because genuinely, I've been trying to get this guy on this podcast for like a year or over a year, and he's just so freaking busy. TJ Atkinson, I am so grateful that you have finally given up some time, which I know is in short supply, to come and have a chat with me on the podcast. TJ, welcome to the Game Alone's podcast.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So you're equally as busy as me, to be honest.
I know, and it's good now because we work together. We actually know we can see how busy each other is, which is good. But no, TJ, look, you're a rent-to-renter turned property investor. You're a mentor. You're a part-time like agony uncle stroke, like you're like a bit like Hitch, and of course, a multi. You've written, I don't know how many books now, like 1,200 books you've written now as well.
Five.
So there's a shed load for us to get into. But if you want, I'd like to give you the floor. Have a couple of seconds just to give us that 30,000 foot view of who TJ Atkinson is for anyone that hasn't come across you before.
Cool. Do you know what? I hate that question so much, and I get it all the time. I don't know why I'm not prepared for it, but I would call myself an accidental property investor. It wasn't something I ever thought I would do. In fact, growing up, I hated the idea of property. I grew up in a council estate. We were given probably the crappiest flats out of every single person. And I thought, well, if this is the way the government treat people when they come from Nigeria, I hate them and I hate property. And to kind of see a whole 360 to now buying and owning property, I'm like, it feels a bit imposter syndrome-ish. But yeah, that's who I am. I think I'm a regular guy who's trying to inspire people to say, hey, it is possible. And up until now, I still don't know what that it is. I just want to kind of serve as a beacon of hope to people to say, whatever it is you want to do, it can happen.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, I think it actually genuinely comes across. There's that whole. I know I mentioned this quite a lot across my social media about this whole like Instagram version of people, and then actually what they're like in real life when you get behind the surface is a little bit different. Having now had the pleasure of being able to actually work with you, I know that what goes on online is genuinely what goes on offline as well. You are the. I've seen. I mean, the last time I actually saw you in person was at the property event with Tej Singh and James Shatoa, and you brought up one of your mentors, one of your mentees, sorry, on the stage, and the pride that you had in your eyes, that he, I mean, I think you even called him like your son or something. It comes across. So I love how genuine you are with it, and the advice that you give online and stuff. It is, it's honest, and I think that not everyone online is like that. So I certainly appreciate that, and I know there's a lot of people out there that do the same.
Thank you. I try my best. I mean, it's still growing, as I would still call myself a baby in property, and I would love to maybe find people who are a lot more genuine in giving advice and information out there, because that's the only way we can grow. And you only know what you know, and if you don't know anything, you can't grow. Oh, I like that. That rhymed. Don't coin
no,
that.
No, you can have that. You can have it. This is being recorded. Even if I did steal it, it will have to come back to you anyway.
Cool. But yeah, I'm a mean learning machine. I'm the biggest believer in the acquisition of knowledge, and I put out content that I think I would wish other people put out, because in my head I'm saying, if only someone could give me this sort of information, I could grow a lot quicker, I could grow better, and I could grow safer.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And that's, I tried to do the same with mine. And you do come across, these people from time to time where, it doesn't come across genuine in terms of just, giving away free advice, would you call it? But actually, it doesn't matter. I'm of the belief that if you're gonna, because I've had people like come to me, especially in my industry, they're like other brokers, like, why are you telling everyone this stuff? That just means they're just going to go direct to lenders. Well, great. If I reach 100 people and 80 of them decide that they want to go direct to the lender, and then 20 of them decide they want to come and work with me, awesome. Like, I'm happy, and hopefully every single one of those 100 people will be successful. And if that happens off the back of something I've done, I'm putting good karma out into the atmosphere. I feel good about that, right?
Agreed. You know what? It's interesting you mentioned the word karma, because it's actually, I go through phases of learning different words, but I go quite deep, a bit geekish. So I know I don't want to expose what your geekish pleasure is, Sam, because we all know it's going around central London and identifying every train station possible. But you were worried there.
I was like,
I saw your face.
Where's this going?
But for me, it's, if I pick up on a new word, I go back to trying to understand the origin of the word, what it means, what it really means. And when you mentioned karma, I've been studying this word karma, aka reciprocity, for quite some time. And that's one of the reasons why you and I do good business, because we're not afraid of giving, because of that understanding of karma. So karma goes back to reciprocity. Reciprocity goes back to creating a moral obligation. If you're a Christian, it talks about the law of sowing and reaping. If you're a Buddhist, it talks about karma, causation, yin and yang, causation, cause and effect. Those tiny little things. That's why people like you flourish, because you're not afraid to give, because there is a universal law that if you give, it will come back. And I think a lot of people need to learn that a lot more in business. I'm not saying don't generate money, but I think the idea of giving naturally means you will receive. And I think in a Christian term, it talks about people with closed fists can't get fed. And if your hands are forever closed and you're not giving, how are you supposed to be blessed? How are you supposed to receive? So yeah, sorry to go off on tangent, but it's just one of my favorite words. So it triggered something in me. So yeah.
No, I actually, I really love that, because funnily enough, I do get quite a lot of like maybe young business owners, property investors, people that are relatively new in what they're doing. And they ask me a little bit like, oh, no, how do I raise money? How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And I said, I think it all starts from having some kind of presence, and you can't build a personal brand without actually, I find it so egotistically frustrating, because that's not there. I don't like it, but everyone understands what it means. But I say to new investors, get yourself out there. Here's another buzzword. Make it easy for people to have access to your knowledge, because they will then ultimately understand more about what you do. They will then learn to trust you a little bit more, and one day they may even be somebody that wants to end up doing business with you, no matter what you do, whether you're like a broker like me, whether you're doing, you're helping people through mentorships like yourself, or you're looking to raise finance, which pretty much every investor is looking to do. Absolutely. And you can't do that just by literally going putting loads of posts up saying, hi, I'm a property investor, give me some money. Okay. You've just got to show people what you're doing, give little insights into your day-to-day. To be honest with you, it's why the advent of stories and stuff on, Snapchat is the best thing ever to happen to business, because it brought about stories on every single other platform where people could just literally jump on for 2 seconds. No one's thinking that you need to craft some amazing piece of beautiful content. It's just your face saying, this is what has happened today, and this is why it's important that you should know what the outcome of this was.
It's authentic. Again, another word that I hate, but that's what it is. And that's what you're right. It causes people to buy into you and to trust you. So it removes all the filter, and it allows people to say, this is someone that I might work with, because they have the knowledge, they come across as they want to help as well. And it's a key lesson for anyone in business. Yeah, definitely.
I completely agree. But look, not wanting to dwell on talking about social media marketing, because that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm really interested to kick things off with, you said you were an accidental property investor. Obviously, you started out doing sort of more rent to rent type stuff, which one of the things that frustrates me about rent to rent is that, well, two things actually I'll say, and I'll leave you to kind of give us your input on how you got started, but also I'd love your feedback on these two things, which is, number one, I think that it has a really bad rep for somehow being like, oh yeah, just start off in rent to rent and then one day you'll become a property investor, which I think is bad, because it takes away the importance of the lessons you learn during the course of that process. But also, obviously, from my perspective, I don't think there is enough good quality. I know you're one of a few people that is giving out quality information about this, but there isn't enough real quality information from those that are genuinely being successful in this strategy to pass on to others. There are lots of mistakes that could be, relatively costly. Obviously, from my perspective, and we've talked about this, the just notifying, the senior landlord of any changes they might need to make to their mortgage products, for example. I don't think that's being done enough. So and I've just kind of thrown a load of stuff at you, but really want to obviously hear a little bit more about how you got into it to start with, because obviously it was a bit accidental. Sure. But we'd love to touch upon those 2 points once you've done that as well.
Okay, so how I fell into rent to rent, again, mistakes. Most of the money I've ever made in life happened by mistake, which is absolutely fascinating to me. And I'm learning and learning that maybe I should make more mistakes. So that's why I'm not afraid of failure. But I had a recruitment business. So I started a recruitment business many years ago, started a recruitment business in my mum's garage, and it was doing really well. Probably one of my best ever businesses that was flourishing quite quickly. And my mum would come back from work, and myself and my friend, an old business partner, would be in her front room, like getting on the telephone, trying to call people. Because I came out of uni, I couldn't find a job. So I thought, why don't I try and find myself a job or create something for myself? My mum walked in one day into her front room. There's papers everywhere. My business partner's there. Her front room's a mess. She just come back from a night shift. She's like, get out of my house, go and work somewhere else. Eventually she saw that I was actually doing something with my life, so she gutted out her garage. I think that's probably my first foray into property development, with my mum kitting out her garage to turn it into my first office. Now I'm a big sucker. I went to Germany to visit a friend over in Germany, Frankfurt, and I fell in love. I literally met a girl while I was there for the week, and I fell in love, and I was like, I think I'm going to marry this girl. I've never told anyone this story before because it's so ridiculous. And then I came back to London to my business partner, and I said, hey, listen, I think we should move this business that's doing really well in London. Let's move it to Germany. And he was like, that makes no sense. And I was like, well, no, it does make sense. Since we're recruiting a lot of these kids from the EU to banks and companies in the UK, why don't we go over to Germany? We can get the best cream of the crop candidates and bring them to London. And he was like, that makes no sense. But I persuaded him. So we moved the business to Germany. I realized very quickly, I realized very quickly that how you do business in the UK is totally different to anywhere else in the world. UK, we're very personality driven in terms of I could walk into a room and people will say, hey, how are you, TJ? We'll talk about football, we talk about commonalities. You could potentially win some business. Germany, different story. Went into my first meeting, tried to give a presentation. They laughed me out of the room, not even in a disrespectful way. It's just I didn't understand the ethics of doing business in Germany. I'm using personality, whereas there they want facts and figures and all this. Hey, my name's TJ, that loud, bravado, charismatic, didn't work. Long story short, we hired a young man called Marcel, trained him up, realized that we had made a big mistake, about to move back to the UK, and we turned the business around very quickly when we removed ourselves from the business. Again, another very, very big lesson that we all need to make as property investors and as business people. You can't do it all. Get a good team, get a power team around you.
Go. We're just going through a tick box, isn't it, of every single like buzzword that we can get through. Yeah.
So long story short, that business was doing incredibly well. In an 18-month period, after that period, it came crashing down. I'd lost everything. My entire confidence was based on that business. I thought I was Johnny Big, whatever it was, walking around town, getting any champagne bottles. And yeah, we made mistakes because we didn't know what we were doing. Some of the businesses we were working with, they needed invoicing in 60 and 90-day cycles, but we were so busy playing around that we forgot to invoice some of the companies. So we were over leveraged. So that business came flat down. I moved back from Frankfurt to my mum's house, and my room became that office that I had started in. So it was kind of a 360. Things were going great. You leave and then you come back, and I'm getting all depressed, upset. My mum walks into the room one day. She says, hey, listen, you need to go and get yourself a job. You need to get out. So I started hanging around with one of my cousins. He was hanging around with some Asian kids, and their dad was super rich. And the dad said something to me which blew my mind. He pulled me aside and he said, teacher, I've heard that you've made some mistakes. I've heard you've made some money. I've heard, that you're an entrepreneur. Do you want an opportunity? He didn't say it in that way, but that sounds better to say it like that. He just said, look, my son's messing around and I want to kind of get my son back on track. So do you know how to manage property? And I'd come across the quote by Richard Branson: if someone gives you an opportunity and you don't know what to do or say yes and figure it out later. So as Mr. Yusuf is saying,
that's one of my favorite
literally quotes. A game changer. Literally. And I hope everyone just takes that on board. Just take it and figure it out. He said, do you know how to manage property, TJ? I said, yes, of course I do. I had no clue. I had no idea. So I jumped, and he gave me an envelope with around 20 keys. So when we're talking about getting into rent to rent, my story is a bit different from many people. I was given an opportunity because somebody was trying to teach their son a lesson. He said, here's about 18 keys. Here's about 18 properties that I already have. Go and manage them. So I jumped on the bus to get back home from Bromley kind of area to Dartford. And I went on Google. And I typed in how to become an estate agent. I was looking for a course or something on how I could manage these properties that I've just said I knew how to manage. And that's where things like Airbnb came up. So I took half of those properties, or as many as those as possible, banged them on Airbnb. That's how I officially got into rent to rent and serviced accommodation. So it wasn't a matter of like everyone else, they discover us on YouTube and so and so. Mine was more of a practical falling in. And then that's when I thought, wow, hold on, I can make money from somebody else's asset. Let me try this, let me try it out. And that's how I fell into it.
Do you know what I like about that? It actually that actually follows quite nicely into that first kind of question that I was, or the first thing I mentioned about the rent to rent as a terminology, almost being a bit of almost like a naughty word in property investing. What you've just said for me actually highlights really what rent to rent truly is, which is property management. It's learning the art of property management, which, as much as another thing that you mentioned in there as well, it's almost like we scripted this. It's awesome.
I know, right?
Another thing that you mentioned in there is about building a team and making sure you have the right people around you. Now, I'm a great believer that, and this is straight off the someone called James Sinclair that I follow quite heavily online, big businessman, and he talks a lot about knowing every part of your business. And actually, for most property investors that I work with that are really successful, they do this. They don't necessarily, they know all the facets of their business, but they don't necessarily work on it day to day. They build their team out. But you've highlighted there something that is often farmed out quite quickly as a skill, which is actually managing the portfolio that you have. Rent to rent really teaches you that quite early doors, and it's a great foundation level kind of skill to get your head around. So I think that, you know, for me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think people need to stop thinking about rent to rent in just like a get rich quick type scheme. Oh yeah, you don't need much money to get into it, all that, which is true. All of these things are true, but actually there are so many skills that you can use it for to learn. And it's actually it's a great way of starting to run a business. You can run it it's like a property management business.
The problem with that, Sam, is you are 100% correct. The problem is it doesn't sound as glamorous and juicy to say, hey, listen, there's this low entry property strategy that you can start with no money versus, hey, come and learn how to run a business. That's the problem. And I think that's where a lot of people get kind of sucked into this idea of, and it belittles the strategy, in my opinion, because of how it's sold, when in reality you are 100% correct. It's a foundational principle that you can build on. So you don't go and start a development project if you haven't learned how to do basic refurb, so you kind of understand the system. And that's why I preach rent to rent. I think it's a great strategy because it's low entry. Whereas a lot of people sell it as this thing that you're going to use to make millions and millions of pounds, when just tell people what it is. Use it as your practice. Use it as something to build your confidence. Use it as something to build your understanding of property. What's the process of evicting a tenant? What's the legal process of managing a property? EPC, gas safety, EICR. How do you know these things if you're not taught them or you don't get to practice them? That's why I think rent to rent is a great strategy for foundational investors and anyone that wants to eventually go off to start doing the bigger things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually the point. I think a lot of people, when they want to get into property, they see it as a great opportunity to build some wealth. They think about the end game. They think about I'm going to be a 200 strong unit property investor one day. And for me, and this is just a business thing in general. For me, every single part of that is a step towards that ultimate goal. But people just see start and finish. They don't see that bit that happens in between. And this is actually, for me, where a lot of business owners in general get things wrong. That they're trying to run a multi-million pound business on the day they open it, when they're not. They've got to get it to, they've got to see all the little tiny little stages that happen between now and then. And rent to rent, as an example of this, when we're talking about somebody that has aspirations to maybe run a massive commercial portfolio one day, well, rent to rent allows you to get from the stage where you have very little money to the stage where you have some cash flow.
Yeah. And
we're not talking, you don't need, £1 million worth of cash flow here. We're just talking about, a couple of grand a month. That is the difference between, and this for me that's the difference where, so this is where I'm always looking at, when I'm looking at business opportunities myself, obviously Grand Union Finance is my baby, but I have other little things that I have running around in the background. I'm constantly thinking about, right, where can I create incomes that will cover outgoings that I have personally. Once I've done that, I have the freedom. I'm not going to say financial freedom. I have the freedom. Tick in the box. Got that in there. Or I'll use a different one. Financial independence to be able to look at opportunities without the concern that my personal life on a month-to-month basis is going to be affected financially. And that to me is key. If you can actually get your mindset into, right, what can I do in the next 6 months to cover my day-to-day outgoings. Once you've done that, it gives you an incredible amount of freedom to be able to look at things a lot more objectively and holistically. And effectively, rent to rent can be that for property investors. Absolutely. You can build that, not necessarily in 6 months, but you can build although I'm sure if you went hell for leather, you probably could, but you can build that cash flow that just covers you, so that we're not talking about going out and buying Lamborghinis here. We're talking about paying your monthly bills. And once that's done, you can then go, right, okay, sit back now. What's the next stage?
I agree. So when people say to me, what's my biggest mistake in property? I always say spending too long in rent to rent. Literally spending too long in rent to rent, because again, coming from where I came from, no sub story, it literally wasn't a thought in my head that property ownership and multiple property ownership was a reality. So when I fell into rent to rent, I thought this was it. This was what was going to make me a billionaire. And I thought, okay, well, I can't buy property, but I can rent property. Do you know what? I'm going all in. But exactly what you just said. And so I will talk about that later on, but I was writing a book for adults about wealth creation and how to manage money. And I started studying something, and it blew my mind with regards to most people, similar to what we were talking about. Most people have this desire to create wealth, but they fail to recognize that income is I love this word, precipice. It's the substratum. God, I'm a geek, but it's the foundation. Yeah, it's the foundation for wealth, because income is what brings peace. If your day-to-day costs are not looked after, you will not be able to have the freedom or the mindset to create wealth. So when everyone talks about, hey, I'm going to do this deal and it's going to make me £1 million, okay, but that deal's not going to manifest in the next 6 to 9 months or 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. So how do you feed your family today? How do you pay your dues today? Does that make sense? So I think a lot of people need to be realistic. I know it sounds crazy when I say be realistic with your goals, because goals are not supposed to be realistic. But if you have no experience, if something's new, then you have no basis for saying you're going to become a millionaire overnight. But you've got basis for breaking down those goals into small, incremental, achievable goals, essentially. So for me, I wish I hadn't done rent to rent for 5-6 years. I wish I'd done it for 2 years. I wish I'd known that you could start buying property by just paying yourself a simple salary and being able to prove income, as opposed to trying to make millions and millions of pounds. And my portfolio could have been 10 times the size by now.
Yeah, do you know, you said there, you're talking about like just giving yourself some like inner peace by knowing on a month basis that you're fine. And so when people, I would say probably 9 times out of 10, if somebody asks me for some like genuine, like basic financial advice, I say to them, go and set up another bank account. And as soon as you're paid from whatever job or whatever it is, every single penny that needs to go out that month, put it into that other bank account and make that your bills bank account. Because then, do you know, and I only started doing this probably 5 or 6 years ago. And the change in terms of like monthly anxiety levels is just astronomical, because look, I guarantee it's not like a one and done. You just stick it in there and then forget about it. Obviously, just make sure that nothing goes wrong or a payment isn't missed for whatever reason because of direct debits failing or something like that. But the peace that it gives you, the peace of mind to know that, right, that is out. And then you can really clearly, because I believe that, people overcomplicate a lot of stuff, but actually when you think about it, if you move everything that needs to come out of your account into another account, whatever remains, you then have the choice of what you then do with that money. Now, obviously we can go into loads more detail about you should invest some of it, you should save some of it, blah, 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 because 9 times out of 10, in this country, people will just go, great, I've got like £300. What am I going to spend that on? But actually, they should probably do maybe something a little bit more with it. But it at least compartmentalizes it. Then you've got, you know, that all the stuff you have to pay is covered, and whatever remains, you know, it's then your choice to make good decisions or not.
It's discipline. And I think that's probably what a lot of people lack in business and in property. It's this it's ego, number one. In my opinion, who do you think you are to assume that just in one day you're going to become a millionaire, when there are people who've been working for 10, 15, 20 years and they're doing the right steps to achieve it? So I think ego plays a part in it. I think a bit of naivety plays a major part. One thing that really pees me off the most in property, unlike any other business, and you don't see this in any other business, people believe that they can start a property business today and they expect results tomorrow. We don't get that in any other business. You could start up any other business and you're willing to put in the 1 year, the 2 years, the 5 year. I think the average is 3 years to see a business even start to profit. But in property, people are sold this idea of you can become wealthy tomorrow, and people buy into it. And I think a lot of what I do is kind of just give people a slap in the face and say, hey, wake up a little bit. Be willing to stay in the game for 3 to 5 years. And I've got this acronym. So it's SITG, stay in the game. So sit, G. So literally sit yourself down and stay in the game for 5 years. And that's when you start to see some returns. But people are not willing to give 5 years to anything. People,
do you know what? The only reason that I cut in then was just because this is genuinely something that like grinds my gears so much, because you go to these like property events and they tell you that you have a specific period of time that you're aiming to get to what we were just saying before. So it's almost there, but they say you want to cover your monthly expenditure so you can give up your job and be a property investor full time. It's the worst advice that anyone can ever give, because when you're trying to build a property business, and that's what it is, a property business, you can't, especially to begin with, probably I would say most of my clients would say maybe the first 10 years, you can't just rely on just the what you're getting from your property business to try and drive it forward. So having an outside source of cash from some kind of employment or business that you run elsewhere is so majorly important. Yeah. So for these people to be telling you, to basically putting that planting that seed in your head that you should be looking to give up work is so poor. Having multiple streams of income is how you can feed off one another. So we've had recently, coronavirus happening, and that so many businesses have failed because they only had one pillar. They had their one pillar, but the businesses that have flourished have been the ones that could lean on something else to be able to allow them to just get through that bad period, because there's going to be bad periods no matter what, and no matter what the industry is. So if you've got different fingers in different pies in different sectors, it does allow you that element of strength. But also the thing is with building a property portfolio, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but the longer you can stay out of having to take income from your property business, the more exponential growth you're actually going to see. Yeah. Because with every property that you add to your portfolio, your property business gets a pay rise. And every time it gets a pay rise, it makes it easier to build the next deposit to buy the next property, which makes it easier to get the next deposit to buy the next property, and so on and so forth. And
that
you just see that arc. You see that arc.
That is a masterclass right there. If only people sat down to I pray that every single person watches this and they get what this is. I don't want to give the timestamp because you might edit it and so on and so, but that part right there is gold, because people are sitting there literally thinking, if I'm going to make X amount from my property, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to go and buy this. Then what money are you going to use to grow the next one and the next one and the next one? Because people are so short-term minded. And that's why I say, look, you know what? I give up on 99% of people. Everyone's got a dream and everyone's got a mouth, but they can't do anything. So it gets frustrating. It does get frustrating.
It does. I think there is naivety to it, I think, as well. And I have to, I guess, remember in what I do, that a lot of the time people are coming to me quite early on in the process, and it's the way that I kind of the analogy I give, it's a little bit like being a self-taught musician, because you can be a grade 8 at something, but as a grade 0 at something else, because you haven't had that process to go through. And that's why when I'm speaking to people that, even to be honest, even when I'm speaking to clients that have been doing it for years, I try and really listen into potentially where some of the gaps in their knowledge might be, because I'm quite fortunate. I get to deal with property investors like yourself on a day-to-day basis. So I can see, oh, so-and-so over there is doing this really well, but so-and-so over here isn't doing this as well. But then they've got other skills that this one over here is doing better than this one over here is doing better. So, so it's trying to sort of meld that together. But yeah, the some of the key stuff that makes property investors that are being successful is, I think one of them is their understanding of how portfolios are grown. And it's that delayed gratification that comes with that. As you say, stay in the game, actually sit back and don't have a time frame on when I need, because I think that's the key, when I need to take money out of this business. Because actually the longer you can hold back, the stronger an asset base it's going to become, the better the cash flow is going to be. And then you can get to a stage where you can start taking some in. But I had a client, I think last year or year before, I can't remember. I think it was just after the first lockdown. He came to me and he said, because he was asking me about like minimum income requirements for mortgages and stuff. And he said to me, I'm thinking about, going part-time. And what I loved about that was that he wasn't just giving up his job and going from 0 to 100. He was going part-time so that he could actually go, right, okay, I'm removing some of my PAYE income. So I'm going to top it up with my property income, but that still allows me more than enough property income to keep it going, to keep that growth happening, to keep that compounding effect happening. So for me, that was another masterclass from him as to how actually you need to strategically, progress as a property investor, because there are many stages.
I mean, even if you look at it from a rent-to-rent point of view, you still need some form of income to pass reference in to rent a property. Now, even more in terms of buying a property, and I'm sure you would say, and you would be correct in saying that there are certain lenders that will be more favorable if you could show some form of income as well. So these people running away, I get it, your job might not be the best in the world, but if you're new to something, you also want to protect yourself, and you also want to protect your peace of mind and know that you still have some form of protection. You have a foundation so you can take greater risk. Don't quit your job today because you've come on a training course and someone's inspired you. Now you're going to, darling, I'm quitting my job today because we're going to be rich tomorrow. When are you going to pay the mortgage with next month? So yeah, there is a lot of awareness that does happen, that does need to happen in this space as well. But I think consumers also need to take some responsibility for buying into these dreams as well.
I agree. And talking of like that kind of transitional type structure, I'm interested to know as well, was there a moment for you when you were doing rent to rent really successfully, and then you suddenly went, I can switch this. I'm now at that point. Was there like a moment you just woke up, or was it you thought, hang on a second, I'm getting close to it, and you just worked towards it? Which kind of one of those was it?
Do you know what? I think it was I saw something on, as much as I cuss everyone on Instagram, I saw something on Instagram. It was a young black kid, and I think I saw him. He did a renovation, and in my head I was like, yeah, that's fake. Which again, of course, I have my certain biases. It was just silly because again, it just didn't click in my head that because again, I thought it needed more money. I thought, again, maybe typically people that buy properties, maybe they got the money, young people, they got the money from their parents. So to see somebody, and I'm like, hold on, I kind of know that guy. Where would he have got the money? And hold on, this property would have cost him around 200,000. Where would he get that from? And I think when we spoke, you were the first person that introduced me to Bridge. And I was like, huh? What do you mean? Who's going to give me part of the money to buy the property? And that's when I went literally crazy. And I said, oh my God, this stuff is, it comes down to education. So again, no shade at you. I think you need to go harder on the information you put out there, because I'm a bit peed off that it took me so long to connect with you to learn about Bridge.
Mate, I'm so sorry. Wholeheartedly apologize for that.
But then that's when I came across you, and we had a phone call, and I probably came across as an amateur because I'm saying, well, I do have this goal of buying property, but I don't know how I'm gonna do it. So do I have to save? I've seen a property for 200,000. Do I have to save 200,000 to buy it, or how much do I need? And you're like, well, there's this thing called bridge and finance, and they can give you the money to buy it. You just need to produce this and produce that, and we're good to go. And the criteria is so simple. So even in my head, I was overcomplicating it. So what you're saying is someone that hasn't bought any property can buy. Yes. Okay. So you're saying that I don't need to have the whole 100%. No. And I was making excuses in my head saying, nah, this guy, Sam, doesn't know what he's talking about. It can't be
you wouldn't be the first person to think that, to be fair.
Well, we do know now, as I said, we've done multiple deals together. We do know clearly you do know what you're talking about, and to a very, very high degree. So no, I'm really grateful for all the content that you put out and your education as well. So that was my transition in terms of this is actually possible. Well, let me try it out. And now, yeah, we're growing.
I mean, firstly, I appreciate that. Obviously, that's awesome to hear. But do you know what? There's one thing that you said in there then, which anyone's listening to this, they're going to take one thing from this entire podcast episode, is exactly what you said. You were talking about, you were asking questions, you were interested, you came across like you didn't know anything. Curiosity as a property investor, to be honest, anyone in business, like it's an absolute superpower. I do it every single day. So if I speak to a lender that I've not spoken to in a couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever, I'm asking them questions. Oh, how's your service levels at the moment? Why are they like that? It's taking you longer to do to get to a mortgage offer now. Why is that? Because I always just want to know exactly what's going on in the market. And so I ask these questions. Everyone should be asking these questions. The worst thing as well, and I can spot it a mile off. I guarantee you. I was on Kazi's podcast recently, and I said to him that I reckon on a first call with somebody, 9 times out of 10, I could call it whether I thought that someone was going to be successful or not, just by the way that they come across. And I always remember, and to be honest, I can't remember their name anyway. So even if I wanted to shame them, I couldn't. But this was about 18 months ago, and I remember speaking to this guy, and he was clearly trying desperately to come across like he was some like property guru, but he kept using all the wrong terminology for everything. So like I could just see straight through it. And the thing is, I remember getting off the call and almost feeling a bit deflated, to be quite honest with you, because whenever I get on a call with somebody that is going to be a potential client, my thought process is, I want this person to be the most successful version of themselves possible, and I want to be part of that, because from a selfish perspective, it means that my business does well. But why can't we all win? It's awesome. And when I got off that call, and I thought to myself, that guy's not going anywhere. Until he can reach that version of himself that can genuinely ask questions and not be scared to feel like an idiot. Because I do it every day. Then he's ultimately going to end up, or maybe he won't end up failing. I think that's probably too harsh, but he certainly won't succeed as much as he should do. And actually, to be honest with you, TJ, one of the great things about working with you is that you do ask questions constantly, and you're not scared to actually think. And I don't know if you know this, because when you're dropping voice notes to me and stuff like that, one of the things you do quite frequently is you actually say, I know this might sound stupid, but. And you say that all the time. It's almost like you're prepping me up for, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm quite happy if it makes me look like a dunce.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because I need the answer. Hopefully you're going to give me the answer. And then once we've done that little little circus, we just moved on, and we then know what to do. Done.
Yeah.
And I also don't care if people ask me like the same question 3 or 4 times, because everyone's got so much info being chucked into their head at any one time. It's hard to retain absolutely everything. So that's another thing people are scared of, is asking questions multiple times. It doesn't matter.
I think people are afraid of being a student, and there are so many quotes out there that pretty much suggest that you can't be a master without being a student first. And so for me, it's all about, that's why I mentioned I'm a big keen learning machine. I literally just do everything I can to acquire new knowledge. And similar to the quote that you just mentioned, so curiosity killed the cat, but I say otherwise. I say curiosity grew the cat, because it's the knowledge that you get to acquire that will allow you to put things in place. And you don't know what you don't know, and you only know what you know. So when you start pulling out bits of information, you can put together the entire piece of puzzle and say, boom, I've got a full picture now. I can do. But people are just afraid of looking silly, because I don't know whether it's an ego thing, whether they've got status. I don't know. For me, I don't care how I'm perceived. And for me, if I need something, I'm ready to ask. So yeah.
No, I like that, and Joe, it's almost I can't think of the exact quote. It's something to do with you never want to be the smartest person in the room. Because you if you're in a room full of people that know infinitely more than you do, you're going to get more out of that room than any of them there, because you're going to start gleaning the information, the knowledge that they're giving off. And
Absolutely.
but you can create those situations for yourself. And I think that as much as this is actually another thing that kind of grinds my gears a bit, where people are so anti-social media. So social media is a devil. No, social media. I love my analogies. There's another one. Social media is like, have you ever seen the film The Mask with Jim Carrey?
Yeah.
So when you put the mask on, you just your own internal qualities are exacerbated, and I think that's what social media does. It just literally whatever. If you hate, you hate more. If you love, you love more.
Yeah.
If you're knowledgeable, it shows off your knowledge even more. If you're keen and hungry to learn, it shows up as well. So when people are being bullies online, all this kind of stuff, it's just like, well, you can't blame social media for that. Ultimately, it's like blaming a boxing glove for taking a punch. It's just a conduit, and I think that people can create. I mean, I'm living proof of when I go onto any social media platform that I'm on, my feed is full of positive stuff. It's full because I only follow people that give out positive knowledge. And stuff. If ever I see anyone on my social media posting anything negative, they're gone. They are out. They're out. And I've been doing that feed for probably almost a decade now, if I'm honest with you. I actually wrote a post on Facebook, God knows how many years ago, and I basically said, I've had enough of negativity in the world. From now on, you will never ever see anything from me being posted that's negative ever again. And I'm pretty certain that I've kept that up. And like we said at the very beginning of the podcast, what you give out tends to come back to you.
Absolutely.
And that's what I do.
It'll never change. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, TJ, look, we've discussed rent to rent. We discussed briefly that foray into moving into full-time property investment, although obviously you still do a little bit of the rent to rent as well. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, just mainly because I'm more interested in it, because I'm considering doing it myself, is you obviously started sort of writing books and stuff like that. And I wanted to. This is not for anyone that's listening. This is genuinely a question from me because I'm interested. When you started writing the books, was it because of what we were saying right at the very beginning? It was another platform, another medium for you to get your knowledge out into the world, or was there genuinely kind of like a bit of a business kind of focus to it?
No. So it's never actually been. It's never actually been for business, actually. I started off, no one knows this, I started off writing crime fiction books. So I'm a big crime fiction geek. That's what I spend most of my time doing. When I'm not on Instagram pretending I know what I'm doing, I'm watching some sort of crime thriller or some sort of crime documentary. So I wrote my first crime thriller book, which nobody on this earth will ever see because it's really bad. But I got kind of a knack for it, and I enjoy writing. For me, I look for forms of happiness. I'm seeking happiness, and I talk about this a lot on social media, and that's why I'm always asking people, are you happy? What makes you happy? So and so. And I think happiness is small pockets of joy. So I'm always looking for small, tiny little things to keep me happy. And whether it's doing a property deal, that's one level of happiness I've just collected. Whether it's writing and doing 10 pages and someone reading it and giving me feedback, so tiny little bits of happiness, and I find a lot of joy in writing, and that's what got me into it. And over time, I've learned the discipline. So now I set an alarm on my phone to write a min of 500 words a day. If I don't do it, I have something called consequences, which means I've got to give £500 to a charity. Only ever done it once, which is what motivates me to make sure I write what I need to write on a daily basis. But it's more for fun, and it's kind of an outlet to get what's in my head out to the masses. So I get through from that as well. Yeah.
Oh, good. No, I'm happy to hear that. And look, for anyone, I guess, TJ, that wants to maybe reach out to you, because you are not only, obviously, you've got certain books that people can pick up and learn a little bit about what you're doing and the methods of how you've built a firstly a rent-to-rent portfolio, and then obviously how that's transitioned into being an actually fully fledged property investor. Although when I say that, I don't want to sound like I'm diminishing rent-to-rent by any stage.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna pull that up a bit.
It's But
some people do say rent to rent isn't property investing, and that typically comes from people who want to begrudge it because they own some property. But in my opinion, what you've invested your time and money into is an investment, so it is still investing. But I agree with you totally. There are different levels to invest in, and there's the element of ownership also. And I think everyone should also be gravitating towards ownership, because that's where real control comes from. And there's so many benefits to owning a property versus rent to rent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's key with stuff like this. And this is what I wanted to ask you about. It says obviously you do, and everyone and their dog is a mentor nowadays. But one of the things, like I said to you before, like you genuinely, when I've heard you talk about people that you do mentor, you don't just take anyone on to start with. You're very particular. And when you do, you seem to put your heart and soul into actually really genuinely trying to help them progress. And actually the successes that you've spoke to me about and you've shown on social media, I think highlight the fact that you're obviously quite good at picking the right people and seeing the right qualities in people, but also, you do enhance those and help them get to where they are. This is a weird way of me saying, how do people get in contact with you to be a mentee? I'm actually going to flip it around. What qualities does a mentee have to work with you? Because I'm quite interested about that.
Yeah. So the first thing is, it depends how they approach me, literally. If someone's come off certain people's training courses, I won't work with them. And that's not because of the individual specifically. It's because of the information they've already garnered or taken on. Because there are certain trainers out there, mentors out there, that will lead you up the garden path to believe that you can make £10,000 per month per property in any location in rent to rent. And I don't believe that to be true. I think you can make an average of £500 to £700 per month. So if someone's been to a training course where they've been told that they can make X amount, and then they come to me, hey, TJ, what do you think? How much can I make? £500 versus the 10,000. I already look like I don't know what I'm talking about. So again, it's about self-protection, protecting myself, protecting my brand. So I'm happy to manage the kind of expectation of who I work with. That's really the foundation of it. It's where you've come from, what's your goal. And for me now, similar to what we've been talking about before, I'm now kind of forcefully pushing people not to spend so long in rent to rent and save some of that money to start buying. So it really depends on the person's goal. What is it that you want? What's your circumstance? When people approach me now and they say, okay, cool, I've got £20,000 in savings. Do you think I should go into rent to rent? In many cases, what I would have said months ago is different now. I'm saying, well, no, I think it might make more sense, because you would have made £500 a month from rent to rent, and you're doing all the running around. You don't own the asset. Let's take that same 20,000. Let's put it into a property that makes you the same 400, 500, but you benefit from ownership of the property. There is a sense that no one can deny it. There is a sense of confidence of something when you own the asset, but also you get to benefit from increased equity, which means you can refinance, you can remortgage, you can grow a lot quicker that way. So it really depends on the individual person. But I don't work with every single person, because people don't know this. I don't really like human beings much. So
which is shocking because you seem really genuine in terms of wanting to like give out,
I think people get that quite wrong. I think the word is ambivert. I'm very introverted, actually. People don't know that, because I speak on stage, because I train, because I'm very much a recluse. I stay by myself most of the time, read my books, watch my little geeky crime documentaries, and write a few words in my wannabe crime novel that's never going to come out. But I just want to help people. So that's one of the reasons I put my head above the fold, because I want to help people and I want to inspire people, especially people coming from my community. I want to show them that, hey, look, you know what, life can be different and you can achieve what you set out to do. And yeah, that's one of my big motivations.
No, that's awesome. And I always try, and when I'm coming to the end of these episodes, I'm thinking, I want to end on a positive note. Yeah. And that's such a nice positive note to kind of finish up on. So again, honestly, everyone listening, we haven't scripted this. It's just TJ's obviously read a lot of books in his life. He knows how the story goes. So no, TJ, look, as I said at the beginning, it was genuinely an absolute pleasure to have you onto the podcast, because I know how much I enjoy our conversations that we have, and I kind of wanted just to have one of our conversations where everyone could listen in, and that's sort of what we've had today, which is really cool. But look, TJ, for anyone that wants to reach out to you to have a discussion, maybe even to talk to you about maybe even taking them on as a mentee, what's the best way of them getting in contact with you?
Instagram. Probably send me a DM on Instagram, and if you just don't want to speak to me, then just jump on Amazon and grab one of my books. Just type in TJ Atkinson on Google or Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, if you're watching this on YouTube, you would have seen the little ticker going across the bottom of the screen with TJ's Instagram on it, so you can see that now. I've added that back on. If you're listening on the podcast, TJ, all of TJ's contact details will be in the show notes for you to be able to check out. But TJ, look, absolute pleasure as always to chat to you. It's great that everyone else got to listen to it this time around. I guess we'll catch up very, very soon, and maybe later on in the year we'll do a part 2 once you've grown out your portfolio even more.
No problem at all. Just a quick one. Instagram is wrong, but yeah, we'll change that.
Is it? This is TJ Life. TJ Life. Oh, yeah. I can do that right. I could do that right now, actually.
Oh,
I'm gonna. Yeah. I can change it. I've done this. I'm almost professional at this now.
I'm gonna have to.
There we go. How's that look? Ready?
Absolutely.
There we go. So everyone had to wait to the end to actually get the right one.
I know, right? Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Cheers, TJ.
Cheers, Sam. Bye-bye.